Hello, I'm Tim McFarlane, Managing Director of the really useful company Asia Pacific, and I'd like to let you know about an announcement that we've recently made. Nearly 20 years ago, the Phantom of the Opera opened in Melbourne. It's done 2 national tours and has been seen by more than 5 million people. I'm delighted to announce that the continuing story of the Phantom of the Opera in Andrew Lloyd Webber's new musical Love Never Dies will open in Melbourne's Regent Theatre in May 2011. The development of Love Never Dies is something that's taken quite a number of years, and I was lucky enough to be at the first workshop of the show 3 or 4 years ago, I suppose, until most recently when I was with Andrew and 2 writers who have been working with him on refining and just finessing the book for this incredibly dramatic story. It's very romantic, and it has what I think is one of Andrew Lloyd Webber's best musical scores ever. You'll love it.
I'm going to be very careful what I say about the story because it's got so many twists that I don't want to give it away. But what I can say is that it's set in America 10 years roughly after the end of the original Phantom. And it's also set in Coney Island. Coney was a fantastic place. Sigmund Freud described it as the only reason to go to the United States. And it was beyond anything that anybody had ever seen, a great 8th wonder of the world. And it was the place where all the freaks and the oddities went. And of course the Phantom could be absorbed in there. And our story finds him 10 years afterwards. He's gone to Coney Island. He's gone with Madame Giry, his old friend, and he's gone with Meg, her daughter. And he's now the big mogul of Coney. He's now running the whole place, and that's where our story starts. I've often thought that we left the original Phantom with a little bit of a cliffhanger, and I thought, well, why not do a sequel to it at one point? And it took a very long time coming. I mean, quite frankly, I thought about it about 15 years ago, perhaps a little bit more. And I had come up with that time the idea about the Phantom going to America. And I talked about it with Freddie Forsyth, the novelist, and who obviously wrote things like The Day of the Jackal, a very, very successful and fine writer. And we talked about it. We came up with a plot, which he subsequently published as a little book called The Phantom of Manhattan. But it just simply didn't gel for me. I couldn't find a way through it, and it was left alone. So I abandoned it, frankly, and I forgot about it. About 3 years ago, I came back and I thought, you know, there is the germ of an idea here. And I worked on it again with a couple of writers, and again, it didn't happen. But I then worked with Ben Elton on a project, and Ben, who's a very, very clever storyteller, said, you know what, this whole thing is really all cuckoo. He said, you've got a fantastic basis, the idea of him going to America, the idea of him perhaps going to Coney Island. It's wonderful. But you're not developing all the original characters. You're not taking them with you. You're putting in new characters. I'm going to do a plot which comes up with the original characters transported. So we have all of the 5, Raoul and Christine, Meg, Madame Giry, and the Phantom. They all appear in our piece, and there's only one new character who's a 10-year-old child of Christine and Raoul's called Gustav. And that's what we came up with. I'm not going to give the story away, but Ben unlocked it. And I'm very story-driven. Anybody who writes for musical theatre has to be story-driven. Well, of course I'm nervous about, I'm following up my own biggest success, and there's no question about it. I mean, The Phantom of the Opera really is the biggest thing that I've ever done, even bigger than Cats, which is in itself, I mean, I never thought we'd top it. But this is it's a piece I'm very proud of, I have to say. I think it's maybe more 3-dimensional in terms of the characterization than the original piece was, which really is a version of Beauty and the Beast, but a bit of a twist. But this one really does develop the characters in a way that I didn't have the opportunity to do in the old one. And therefore it was a very exciting thing for me to write musically. So yes, of course I'm nervous about it, but I'm very proud of it, and I'm very, very much looking forward to seeing it on stage.
What I'm particularly pleased to announce is that this new production of Love Never Dies will have a distinctively Australian stamp to it. For many years I've spoken to Andrew about the depth of creative talent in Australia. It's something that's been well known to him for many years. Directing this new production will be Simon Phillips, who also directed Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, and a brand new design by Gabriella Telesova. This will in fact be the first new Australian production of an Andrew Lloyd Webber musical in over 20 years. It's something that we're very proud of. The Phantom of the Opera is loved the world over. Next year is its 25th anniversary on Broadway, where it is already the longest running musical ever. I hope, like us, you'll be excited to learn about what happened to the Phantom's love story, and that you will join us at the Regent Theatre in Melbourne from May 2011 and prepare to believe again.